So this is what the neutral territory looks like. This is just my desk, and I have wiped this clean so it shouldn't smell like anything or anyone, and I do have a coaster at the back because my desk has a hole in it and I don't want them going down there, so I've blocked that off. I'm going to use this. I've also blocked off this side as well just so they can't get anywhere they shouldn't, and I'm going to use this as my neutral territory. So I think I'm going to start with Sprig and the new girls. She is my troublemaker. She has a few issues with the other girls, especially when there's food around. We are working on that, but she is a bit of a troublemaker and can start a lot of the fights. So I do want to see how she reacts to the new mice without all of the other mice being around as well, because that might overwhelm her. So I'm going to start with her first. Opal is technically the alpha. She's the biggest and the oldest, and she does tend to put the other mice in their place. So I think I'll do her after Sprig, but I do just want to see how Sprig reacts initially because she is the one that I'm worried about the most. So initially I think that went really well. It went better than I was expecting it to. I was worried about Sprig, but I don't think I really needed to be. Straight away she was relatively comfortable with the other mice, and she did start grooming herself, and a lot of the others started to groom themselves as well, which is a really good sign to look out for. If your mouse is comfortable enough to groom themselves, then generally that does mean that they are quite comfortable around the new mice, so that was a really good sign. It did look a bit crazy having 8 mice running around together all at the same time. There was definitely too many places to look at once, but I am really pleased with how this initial stage went. They were all interacting with each other and sniffing each other, which is good. I didn't really expect them to fight at this stage. They were just getting used to each other and familiarising themselves with each other's scents, which is what you should expect in this initial stage. So this stage went really, really well, which is why I decided to move them on about 20 minutes after this into the next stage, which was putting them into a small carrier together. So if you're familiar with my rat videos and also my mouse videos I've done in the past where I introduced them before, you'll know that I use a method called the carrier method to introduce both my rats and my mice. So a lot of people use this method, and I've had quite a lot of success with it with my rats and also my mice. The basis of this method is you start them out in a small cage or a carrier. This just gives them less territory to defend against the other mice, which means there is less of a chance of them fighting, and then gradually you work them up to being in slightly bigger cages as their behaviour improves and you see them bonding as a group. So all I'm using for this is a bin cage we made. This is made out of a plastic tub and some mesh. If you don't have something like this, even though it is relatively cheap to make, you can just use a hamster cage that is Not actually recommended to be a hamster cage because it's far too small. Things like this are also really good for introductions. Just make sure it doesn't have really big bar spacing, because if a mouse is desperate enough, especially in these circumstances, they can squeeze out and escape. So that's why I recommend using something like a bin cage for this first initial stage. So at this stage I kept it very bare. I did add in some bedding in the bottom and also a water bottle and a water bowl, but even a toilet roll at this point could push them over the edge. Mice can get very territorial over cage items, so you want to be careful at this stage not to give them anything that they could defend against the other mice, which is why it's kept very, very bare initially. So this was literally the cutest thing ever. They were all consistently sleeping in one massive pile, which was so cute to see, but also a really good sign. They were all comfortable enough with each other to sleep together, which is really good. So after a few hours of them consistently sleeping like this in a massive pile, I decided to move them on to the next step. So this is the next step. This is what my new girls were living in temporarily. I've completely taken out all of the toys and accessories and the old bedding and scrubbed the cage clean with disinfectant. Hopefully that's got rid of all of their scents to make this a neutral cage that doesn't belong to anyone. So a lot of you have been asking me what this cage is. This is a spare Exoterra I have, and it's a medium-sized one. I know a lot of people use this for their mice. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of it for this purpose. I find it really hard to utilise all of that space at the top and actually hang anything that the mice can use without ruining the Exoterra and having to modify it in some way. And this isn't what I want to use this Exoterra for long term. So as a temporary cage and for introductions it works really well, but I wouldn't really use this as like a permanent cage for mice. I don't really like it for that purpose. But I'm going to stop rambling about the cage now. Here is some footage of me putting the mice into the next step of their introductions.
One hour later.
So I've just cut up this box for them. I've took the bottom off just in case I need to get to them quickly if they are fighting. And I've also cut plenty of access and exit holes for them. When you're introducing mice, it's really important to make sure in the initial stages you don't put anything in that they can't get out of. So having multiple exits, if they do start fighting, allows one of the mice to quickly just escape out of one of those routes. So I'm going to put this in to just give them a bit of cover, because right now they are trying to hide under this cardboard thing. So I'm going to put some softer bedding in and just give them this box to sleep in, because they do really want to sleep right now and they are doing really well. So I'm just going to put this in and then gradually start adding more and more accessories for them. Look at them right now sleeping in this. That is so tragic. I'm giving you a box, guys. Hang on. So I gradually started to add in more items for them as they were doing so well. I gave them a few wheels and also a few things to chew on and do, and I did alternate these throughout the week. They were living together. They did have to stay in this stage for about 10 days just so I was certain, because they are such a large group, certain that things were working well before they moved on to their next step. But I did keep them in this stage for about 10 days and they did do relatively well during this time. So they did have a few loud fights or arguments, mostly during the night when I was asleep. So I didn't capture too much of this on camera. I know I did say during the last introduction video I would try to get a lot more of their behaviours next time, but honestly nothing dramatic happened. There wasn't anything that I could really film for you. Olive did end up with a few scratches on her ears, but this can naturally happen as an accident anyway, and they are really big, so this wasn't anything too serious. And they did surprisingly really well. They did a lot better than when I introduced 5 mice, and considering 8 of them have to learn to get along, I think they did really well.
The following Thursday.
Okay, so today is the day they go into the detolf. I think they've been living together now for about 10 days, and I'm just really excited for them to get to this stage. I do feel really sorry for them during intros, having to live in a smaller cage, but I'm really excited and I hope they behave in a larger cage. So all I've done is taken out all of the old bedding from the 5 girls that were living in here before, disinfected it to make sure that none of their scents are in this cage, and then added in all new fresh bedding, and then just water sources in various places around the cage. Right now I've not added in any other cage items. I don't want to overcomplicate things and give them anything else they can fight over. I do just want them to get used to having this much space as a group before I start adding things in, which I probably will do later on today. So all I did after that was add in a few more items gradually, like their wheels and their hides. I did want to quickly address something, which was when I said I was introducing all 8 of them, I did have a few messages of people that were concerned and saying that I can't introduce any more than 6 mice because after that they would split off into their own separate groups and fight. This isn't necessarily true or necessarily always the case. Groups can be unstable once you go past 6 mice, but it's not impossible and it can be done. And I do have a lot of friends that are breeders or just have a lot of mice in general. They do have groups of about 10 to 12 mice in a D12. I don't want any more than 8. I'm done now. I'm not going to get any more mice for a few more years, but I do know people that have a lot larger groups than I do, and it works really well, so it's not impossible. It can be done. You just have to go really slowly with the introductions. So they've been living together now as a group of 8 for about 3 weeks, and weirdly enough I find the dynamics of all 8 of them work a lot better than it did with just 5 of them. When it was just 5, I had a lot of issues with the 2 rescue girls. They were quite aggressive towards my other mice during feeding times, but I found that having all 8 of them living together, it's a lot more peaceful, which you would think it would be the other way around, but although it does look crazy at times, the dynamics are a lot better than when I had less mice, which I definitely didn't expect. I was expecting the worst, but they are living together and they are doing really well, and I'm so happy. I couldn't have asked for a better situation. So I'm sorry that I didn't capture too many of their behaviours when you do introduce them. I was hoping to get a few more behaviours that they do to each other when they are interacting and trying to sort out their hierarchy. Tail rattling is a big one. That is something they do to warn the other mice before they bite them. I didn't see any of this and I didn't capture any of this on camera, so I am really sorry that this isn't the best example of what it's like to introduce mice, but sometimes it is just this easy. I did get very lucky with it, and I would say if you are considering introducing this many mice to each other, do carefully select the mice you are going to introduce. I was worried with my rescue girls because they don't necessarily have the best temperaments, but do just make sure you take it very, very slow, and it is possible to introduce this many mice together. So right now their cage just has a bunch of random items. It's all things that are open or have exits on either side, but I am making them a naturalistic enclosure, and that should be in a couple of weeks or a month's time that is finished, and I can show you guys. So that is it for today's video. If anything, I hope you enjoyed seeing a lot more footage of the mice. Please make sure you are subscribed to see any more animal content from me, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!